When Ryu was introduced to Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, I could only describe my reaction to his arrival as a surprise. The fighting game and Smash Bros. Communities have been incredibly antagonistic towards each other ever since the days of Melee, with traditional fighters believing platform fighters to be a mockery of what makes fighting games so engaging. So when Ryu, the iconic protagonist of Street Fighter, arguably the most well-known fighting game series of all time, crossed over into Smash, that was history in the making, and likely what gave way to other FGC titles like Tekken and Fatal Fury joining the ranks in the next installment of Smash. Alongside the wave of newcomers was Ken, Ryu's Echo Fighter, featuring the canonical similarities and differences like they do in Street Fighter. Ryu mains from Smash 4 quickly drove out to try Ken, and thanks to the myriad of buffs given to him and his counterpart throughout the early years, he's had a very solid, albeit niche player base and no shortage of competitive success. But ever since 2022, the number of Ken mains has been on the decline, especially in recent months. So, for today's episode of Why No One Plays, I want to go over what happened to Ken in Smash Ultimate. Why are people starting to drop him? Before we continue, a word from today's sponsor, HelloFresh. If you're not a fan of cooking like I am, you can try out HelloFresh. It's a meal prep catering service that delivers fresh, handmade meals right to your door with easy step-by-step recipes that take 30 minutes or less to make. I myself make use of meal preps a lot because I'm lazy as hell, and I've used HelloFresh a couple times this year. Each meal provides you with pre-portioned ingredients so you don't waste time preparing the meal or waste food. In fact, according to a global food waste study, on average you waste about 23% less food compared to grocery shopping. If you check out their website, they offer a new menu every week with a wide variety of assorted dishes, each with their listed cooking times, as well as any labels like if they're spicy, vegetarian friendly, and a brief list of ingredients. Dozens upon dozens of dishes to choose from, so you'll never get tired eating the same thing. If you're at all concerned about environmental problems from food delivery, HelloFresh is actually the first carbon-neutral meal kit company, and nearly all packaging is recyclable, so you can rest assured all of your meal preps are sustainably packaged and delivered. So if that made you hungry, feel free to use my link or go to HelloFresh.com and use the code POGVARS SEPT16 for 16 free meals across 7 boxes and 3 surprise gifts. If you look in the description, it tells you how many people used my link, so you can see if others tried it out too. Great to be working with HelloFresh once again. They sponsor my other 2 channels, but for now, let's get back into the video. During the first years of the game, Ryu and Ken were actually considered quite underwhelming. Due to the former's great success in the previous title, they both started out much weaker compared to Ryu's Smash 4 iteration, even though they're now able to automatically face their opponent just like in their home game. Regardless, they had a slow start. It wasn't until the substantial amount of buffs come version 3.1, as well as even more buffs in 7.0, that propelled them from an obscure mid-tier status to firmly in high tier where they stand today. However, up until that point, Ryu's weaknesses were still too conspicuous, leading many to hypothesize Ken being the greater beneficiary of the 2 Shotos. That sentiment was further compounded by the differences between the 2 specials, where Ken's was seen as more applicable and versatile. Because of this, Ryu's representation in the pro scene was almost non-existent, while Ken featured a very healthy amount of screen time during 2020 and 2021. But nowadays, we're starting to see more of the main pro tag in the spotlight, with great showings at Genesis and the Game Invitational among other events. While Ken was originally recognized as the stronger of the 2 Shotos, circumstances have not been in his favor. Further buffs were given to exclusively Ryu, and the changes to the competitive scene came at his expense, with the most noteworthy being the advent of 2 other FGC characters, Terry and Kazuya. And this brings us to the foremost cause of Ken's decline in popularity. Smash Ultimate always had a very aerial-centric metagame, putting fighters who prefer to stay on the ground at a disadvantage in terms of viability. Anyone with the subpar air game would need to have a ground game so overpowering to balance the scales, but that resulted in a dog-eat-dog type environment for said ground fighters. It also emphasized how each character was able to deal with their individual flaws. Of the 4, Ken has withstood the test of time the worst. By no means am I saying he's a bad character, many still consider him a high tier, but his representation mostly stemmed from the lack of competition in his department. Now there is. For the sake of argument, let's compare the key attributes between him and the other FGC characters, starting with Ryu. The key difference between Ryu and Ken is how they apply their pressure. While Ryu has a penchant for powerful single blows and forcing errors out of his opponent, Ken prefers to go for a more damage-racking and combo-focused playstyle. As a result, much of his moveset was designed with that in mind, possessing less kill power to allow him to connect strings of combos and hits together. This would give him a stronger advantage state than Ryu, but it came at the cost of a worse neutral game, which is something all FGC characters struggle with due to their almost exclusively short-range pressure. Their normals are more or less the same, barring maybe a couple select moves. Specials are where the 2 diverge, and the one in particular I want to go over is Hadouken. Unlike his friend, Ken is only able to perform a regular Hadouken and is noticeably weaker overall, doing far less damage, having less maximum and minimum travel speed, and being slightly laggier. Granted, a projectile is still a projectile. It gives him the option to force approaches and rack up damage from a distance, but it does the bare minimum. Ryu's Hadouken can travel a lot faster if using the heavy version and ever so slightly slower if using the light version. The former can be used to apply basic pressure, while the latter can be used for zone control given that it lasts longer. If memory serves, you can even get combos off the light version similarly to how Samus can set up grabs or dash attacks using mini charge shots. Ken's projectile is just not threatening enough to most players in the long run. It doesn't matter if you get hit by 2 or 3 of them since you'd barely take 20 damage altogether. One Shakunetsu from Ryu deals just as much damage as 3 full power Hadoukens from Ken. I've seen Ryu players deal 100% off of just Shakunetsu. Ken is only able to output that much damage through his overwhelming combos, and to its credit, few players out of the entire roster have the same close quarters pressure that he does. But therein lies the problem. More often than not, Ken has no choice but to approach if he wants to exert his pressure, and his slow ground speed and stubby range make it a lot harder for him to tap into what makes him so powerful, especially against opponents who are fully aware of this. Forcing advantageous neutral interactions is one of the most critical elements in competitive Smash because it leads into every other element in the game. A neutral interaction is what creates an advantage or disadvantage state, where characters are able to rack up damage through various combos. It leads into edgeguard scenarios, ledge trap scenarios, tech chase scenarios, it leads into everything. Prevailing Wisdom strives to achieve as many successful neutral interactions as possible, be it a stray hit or a combo starter that can lead into a potential 0 to death. It doesn't matter. As for achieving said neutral interactions, it really boils down to 2 options, approach or be approached. For instance, Samus is a very powerful neutral thanks to her missiles and charge shot, which exert enough pressure from a safe distance that the majority of the cast doesn't have an answer to, such as a reflector or their own projectiles. As such, they need to approach her if they want to achieve a favorable neutral interaction. The reason I'm making such a big deal out of this is because ever since version 12 and 13, Ken struggles the most at approaching and forcing approaches out of the 4 HCers. We already went over Ryu's Hadouken. As for Terry, Power Wave is effectively the same as Ken's Hadouken. It's a bare minimum projectile. But what he does have is 2 fantastic burst movement options, Crack Shoot and Power Dunk. This grants him a ton of mix-up potential for approaches, and once he gets access to Buster Wolf, that becomes a 3rd approach option. Crack Shoot does a ton of shield damage while the other 2 just straight up kill. Ken doesn't have any burst movement options, and the only movement type attack he has is Tatsumaki, but unlike Ryu's, his is a combo starter, not a strong blow. Admittedly, it's safer due to the fact that you can cancel it whenever you want to, but it comes at the cost of never killing. As for Kazuya, not only does he possess the strongest reflector in the game, but he has a mountain of incontestable moves and crouch dash, accelerating his ground speed and low profiling him for every duration. Ken's lack of utility in his otherwise very strong offensive kit makes it really hard for him to safely get in range to exert that offense. I would argue that even after all the buffs to Ryu, Ken's advantage state still pulls ahead, but the lack of flexibility in neutral can lead to more polarizing outcomes. Against opponents with equally inflexible neutrals, Ken is probably the better choice, but against everyone else, people are noticing Ryu offers a bit more stability and consistency, and remember, when it comes to esports, consistency is the ultimate driving metric behind a character's popularity. Speaking of which, in light of recent events, many players are starting to believe Terry and Kazuya can accomplish everything the 2 Shotos can do, but more consistently and/or to greater payout. For Ryu, thanks to the buff to Shakunetsu Hadouken, he now has a more reliable neutral game since it forces most enemies to approach him, which is what he wants at a melee range. In essence, Ken and Ryu now embody their respective identities from their game of origin. Ryu was always the more all-around generalist of the 2, relying on his fireballs to press enemies to get within range of him where he can punish accordingly, while Ken is perceived as more aggressive and proactive. He likes to get up in his opponent's face and beat their ass. Initially, Ken's assets were valued more favorably on account of Ryu's assets being far less pronounced back then, and because we were in a very confrontational proactive playstyle meta during the early days of Ultimate. Though in recent years, as you're no doubt aware of by now, the metagame has shifted from close-range rushdown playstyles to more mid-range whiff punish and trapper playstyles. Not to sound like a broken record, but Fighters Pass 2 served as a significant turning point in the pro scene. Characters like Min Min and Steve are causing many players to reevaluate the validity of pure offense, as recklessly approaching either of them can lead to a massive amount of punishment. Meanwhile, Sephiroth and the Aegis have ushered in more fighters who excel at mid-range, creating even more difficult matchups for Ken. And do not forget the most powerful whiff punisher in the game, Kazuya, who straight up iframes his way into breaking you to pieces. Throughout the changes in the meta, virtually exclusive melee fighters have had to fight an uphill battle, and Ken was one of them. This may not be the best example, but if you compare the recent PGRU V3 with the PGRU V2 back in fall 2019, you'll notice a steep drop in rushdown melee-only fighters and a lot more tactical punish game fighters. Not just characters, but also playstyle. Top-ranking players like Ludo and Light were able to maintain their placements despite still fielding solo melee, but only after heavily adjusting and optimizing their gameplay. Fortunately, Fox has access to his incredible speed and ledge trapping game, while Wario has an incentive to camp, neither of which are available to Ken. While it's true that his melee game is a force to be reckoned with, he needs to get within striking distance to do so, and there are simply way too many characters in top level that make it really hard for him to do so. Steve, Sonic, Kazuya, Samus, Game & Watch, Rob, Snake, Aegis, Diddy Kong, Cloud, Ness. These are very common sights at high and top levels of play, and I have a feeling it will only continue to get more and more common. It's because of this that a number of Ken players have migrated over to other FGC characters. Riddles now co-mains Terry and Kazuya and has no intention of ever using Ken in bracket as of right now. Andres FN has been playing a lot more Terry than Ken lately, and I believe Vendetta has started maining Kazuya. This is further illustrated by the recent competitive success of Icon and Ashimo, who both solo main Ryu. In the current metagame, now more than ever, a strong and flexible neutral and/or approach game is necessary to survive. And if you're a close quarters fighter, you either need incredible physics like Fox, Wario, and Wolf, or you need a big ass sword like Roy and the Aegis. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I felt like the prior reasons were more important to list first. Casting aside external circumstances, Ken has always been a very difficult character to play, so his representation, even during his prime, didn't come anywhere close to the widespread usage of cast members like Roy. Specific button inputs can change his normals and specials around, and depending on how you use those inputs, you'll get dramatically different outcomes. This brings us to another problem with Ken's gameplay. Ironically, he doesn't have a whole lot of ways to easily kill you. Excluding smash attacks, Ken really has only two easy ways to close out your stock. Flaming Shoryuken and Osoto Mawashigeri, the spinning roundhouse kick for those of you who don't know. Those are the only accessible kill moves in his repertoire. The others like back air and down air can't be comboed into, at least I don't think. In his defense, Ken has never struggled to end stocks. If you don't know how to DI it properly, his Flaming Shoryuken can wipe you off the face of the map in under 100%. But since that's his most common way of doing so, it's very predictable to see coming, and opponents can deny him the chance if they have the necessary options. Ryu, on the other hand, has more than just as powerful Shoryuken. It may not seem like that big of a difference maker, but Tatsumaki is a fantastic kill confirm not only for being an extra kill move that he can use, but since he travels horizontally for quite a distance, he can chase after people who try to SDI out of his down tilts. From personal experience, I've actually seen Ryu players use Tatsumaki to close out stocks more than his trademark Shoryuken. Then we have Terry, the man with a billion different ways to kill you. Down tilt Buster Wolf, down tilt Burn Knuckle, jab jab Power Dunk, jab jab Rising Tackle, falling air into Rising Air into Burn Knuckle, falling air into Down Air, up air into Rising Tackle, up tilt into Power Geyser, jab jab into Buster Wolf. Terry has so many different ways to kill you off the top and the side that it doesn't matter where you are on stage or what you're trying to mash out of, he's gonna clap them cheeks. And, of course, Mr. Mishima himself. We're not gonna talk about him. One final thing is that Ken's aerial game is understandably subpar. Most of the time he excels on the ground, utilizing his superior frame data and heavy combos to exert most of his pressure. In Ultimate's aerial-centric environment, more emphasis is placed on a character's air game than ground game. If they had the choice, they would rather go for someone with stronger aerials than ground attacks rather than the inverse. Mind you, Ken's aerials are usable, but in a lot of cases he prefers to stay on the ground, appropriately so. In totality, what Ken's able to do, others can do better, or in more ways than one. Does it detract from his competitive viability? No. That being said, there are more important factors that contribute to a character's popularity or lack thereof than how strong they are. Ken is still a very strong fighter in his own right, and we had a respectable lineup of top-level reps for him. But through buffs to his rival and the addition of Terry and Kazuya, if you're going for a ground-based brawler type, there's just more flexible options out there. And even if there wasn't, Ryu is no longer believed to be significantly outclassed by Ken. In fact, some are debating he might be slightly better solely because of his more reliable neutral game and greater number of kill options. It doesn't really help that what made Ken special, being his overwhelming combo game, is no longer unique to just him. You would frequently see him doing like 70 to 90% combos on the regular, something Ryu was never able to do. But we have Kazuya who can do 120% off a single combo or just kill you from zero. In some way, much of Ken's current situation reminds me of Inkling. Early on in Ultimate's lifespan, these two had a moment where everyone thought very highly of them, but now through buffs to other characters, the addition of DLCs, and the evolving meta, the number of incentives to play Ken has been steadily declining. Once again, he's still a very strong character, it's not like he got nerfed or anything, but the playing field has been leveled a lot. Ryu and Ken are pretty much equal in strength overall, it's just that one is more of a range pressure with Punisher and the other is about head-on confrontation. And I guess to a lot of players, what Ryu offers is just a bit more valuable than what Ken offers. As lame as it sounds, having the option to camp is a virtue in this day and age, especially with the growing prevalence of mid-range fighters like the aforementioned Swordies or trappers like Rob and Steve. Is there a chance Ken will see a resurgence in the meta? Probably not. Balance patches according to Nintendo have concluded with version 13, so there's no more potential buffs for him, and given his moveset and overall playstyle, the only people I foresee picking him up are those that have a personal attachment to him. If we're speaking in terms of viability and playstyle, so far every FGC player has said Kazuya, Ryu, and Terry are more fun to play, so it's gonna be tough for Ken to find his way back. Although personally I enjoy watching Terry and Kazuya more, so I guess that's my opinion. If you guys enjoyed today's video, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter, joining my Discord server, and checking out my other Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.